Oof,
Raucous.
I don't know what you're expecting. Oh boy, happy Thursday, everyone. It's now been 18 days since Kamala Harris became the Democrat nominee, but she still hasn't held a press conference. Why is she ducking the media? Staffers blame some of the delay on the fact that English is her second language. Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain, I don't see that as a problem, said one woman. But even CNN, a reporter delivered a devastating fact check on Waltz's claims about military service. And you know what they say? When you've lost CNN, thank your cable provider. Meanwhile, Harris has added Waltz to her website, but still hasn't added a single policy. In her defense, she thinks a website is where spiders meet for sex. But she did at least post her new campaign slogan. That's your flicked. See? That's how you get around things. The Harris Waltz campaign has apparently made $1 million selling camo hats. Evidently, most of the caps were sold to staffers who don't want to be seen when standing next to Kamala. President Biden said he's not confident at all in a peaceful transfer of power if Trump loses the election. He would have said more, but then he saw the nurse that he swears is taking money out of his wallet. The pretzel snack chain Auntie Anne's is now releasing a buttery dough-scented perfume. However, there is a warning on the bottle that reads, "Do not wear around this man." All right, let's do a monologue. So we're finding out that much like a monkey's cage, Tim Walz is full of crap. Because unlike the Harris campaign, people are actually vetting him, especially the vet part. And he's about to become unburdened of the biggest highlight on his resume, meaning his military service with the Army National Guard. As noted by the Washington Free Beacon, when Waltz first ran for Congress in 2006, his campaign described him as a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom, which typically applies to someone who served on the ground in Afghanistan during the War on Terror. But for him, it was more like Operation Enjoying Freedom in Italy, not Afghanistan. Here he is in 2007 after he was elected to Congress talking about his time during that operation.
I spent 24 years in the National Guard, some of that full time. I was an artilleryman. I deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. My battalion provided base security throughout the European theater from Turkey to England in the early stages of the war in Afghanistan. And that same battalion is now in Iraq at this time.
Now, it sounds like he was a lot closer to the battlefield than he actually might be. He was, in fact, deployed to a base in Italy. He wasn't taking live fire in Operation Enduring Freedom. It was more like Operation Enduring Pasta. I kid. And in 2009, a local veteran went to his Minnesota office and asked the staffer if it's possible to mistakenly assume that he served in Afghanistan based on his website bio. And the staffer said, perhaps. So the vet suggests, hey, maybe you should change it to say that Waltz served in Italy instead. But Waltz's office did nothing, though they did offer the vet a case of military-grade tampons. Then there's the two fellow National Guardsmen who said in 2022 that Waltz reached the rank of Command Sergeant Major but didn't complete the coursework to maintain that rank before he retired at a lower rank, which the Minnesota National Guard confirmed. Yet even on his own website, he still calls himself Command Sergeant Major. Apparently his resume has more padding than Joy Behar's toilet seat. So, did he lie about his rank to fuel his political aspirations, just as he managed to avoid a war? Does it matter? When your job is to lead young men in battle, but your desire to dine with Barack and Michelle matters more, you probably had no business leading anyone to begin with. And yet the Harris campaign just posted this video of Waltz talking about how the weapons he carried in war shouldn't be allowed anywhere but the battlefield.
I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Next, he'll tell us he used his bayonet to do butter carving. But if Tim Walz said we should ban the very weapons he carried in war, and he didn't carry any weapons, doesn't that mean we can keep all of our weapons? Great. I want an Abrams tank. Again, he's never been to a war zone unless you count his state during the George Floyd riots. In reality, when his unit got called for deployment to Iraq after he'd been appointed to acting senior enlisted leader, he bailed to run for Congress. But now even CNN is calling him out.
Waltz did make a comment, speaking to a group, he's done it a couple of times, where he has used language that has suggested that he carried weapons in a fighting situation. There is a difference between being in a combat area, being involved at a time of war, and actually being in a position where people are shooting at you. There is no evidence that at any time Governor Waltz was in a position of being shot at, and some of his language could easily be seen to suggest that he was. So that is absolutely false.
Holy that's CNN. I know. Wow. Who did Waltz piss off? Did he steal one of Jake Tapper's copies of Jugs magazine?
I remember those.
Meanwhile, listen to Minnesota Senator Tina Smith comparing Waltz to J.D. Vance.
Well, here is Tim Walz, who enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served in the National Guard for 24 years, and I'm not aware of any military service that J.D. Vance has ever served. So let's just make the comparison there.
Let's not, Tina. First, you're leaving out the main point. No one is accusing Vance of lying. And it's kind of hard to believe you're not aware of any military service Vance served. What else are you not aware of? That you stole John Denver's haircut? Woo, crazy. Fact is, lies like this got Brian Williams demoted, and the closest he came to combat was being near Matt Lauer's office. But apparently the new tactic here is to muddy the waters, right, Nance?
J.D. Vance has criticized him as never having been in combat. And,
Has he? Has he?
Well,
Has J.D. Vance been in combat?
well, I think he was over in Iraq, I think.
I think. Wow, these are some journalists. Now, Nance, J.D. never said he was in combat, unlike Waltz, which you would have clearly heard if your last facelift hadn't blocked your ears. The oddest take, though, comes from Mayor Pete, who wrote, quote, "Denigrating a soldier's service based on whether he deployed to a war zone is kind of like denigrating a woman's citizenship based on whether she happens to have children." So I guess 2 months of paternity leave makes him an expert on childbirth. This is the worst analogy ever. A non-deployed soldier is like a childless woman. Maybe if the childless woman tells people if she has kids to get benefits.
Boom.
Mayor Pete manages to derail trains and conversations. So it seems the Dems only fight when it's political. Then they circle the wagons. The problem is what they're defending for many Americans is indefensible. You can lie about stolen valor, but you can't make veterans forget about it. Let's look at tonight's guest. He never gets cold feet. Fox News contributor Johnny Joey Jones. She was the cute one on MTV, and I don't mean Kurt Loder. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. He's destroyed more snowflakes than rock salt, comedian Lou Perez. And his ear canal is bigger than the Erie Canal. Joey, help guide this conversation in the right place, because I know that a lot, like if people aren't aware of stolen valor, or they're not in the military, they can be understandably ambivalent about these details. Because the thing that I hear is, hey, the dude did 25 years or 24 years in the National Guard. I mean, you didn't do that. Isn't that good enough? But that isn't the point, because people who do stolen valor are in the military for the most part.
Yeah, so here's what's funny about this. Nobody's denigrating him for not going to combat.
Yeah.
They didn't just say one day, you know what, you were in the military, but you didn't go to combat, so it doesn't count. He said he went to combat. They're mad at him or pointing out that he denigrated his own service by in his own words, serving 24 years in the National Guard wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. He had to go and lie and say, the weapon I carried in war. Or to leave it just open enough that somebody can infer that his deployment in support of Operation Enduring Freedom would have been in Afghanistan, where most people who deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom went. And so he's done this. He's used this as an opportunity to get folks to support him, to get veterans to believe he went to combat and served in war. He can't even be a member of a VFW, right? He didn't go to a foreign war. He may can, but you get what I'm saying. Yes. And so the idea here is that he has chosen to define his service based on whether or not he went to war by making it a point to lie about going to war. I don't want any veteran to go to war. I appreciate my buddies that didn't have to. There are only a few of them. Because if you serve for 24 years, for him, for half a dozen while we were at war, you have to work hard not to go to war. So that's a different subject. And then the rest of this about he left his unit before they deployed. Listen, I don't know if he had fear of death or fear of missing out, but he chose to go run for Congress. Good on him. His unit will never forget it. There's half a dozen of them that are talking about it. When you're in a position of leadership, when the word command is in your title, you have an added responsibility to not just do the right things, but show others what the right things are. And the right things are not pulling up chalks and leaving.
Mm-hmm. All right. You know, Kennedy, I did some research on you. Turns out that you have been to an Army-Navy game.
That's right. That's right, Greg.
Do you think it was fair of you to extrapolate that into telling people you were a Navy SEAL?
You know, it felt like it, Greg, because it was raining.
Yes.
And so there were waterworks. There was a lot of circumnavigation of the parking lot.
Yes.
You know, I had to use my powers of deductive reasoning to figure out where to get a White Claw within the stadium. And, you know, frankly, every November 11th, is it the 7th or 11th? I throw myself a little bit of a party because, thank you, the 11th, because I frankly deserve it.
Yes.
And I'm more brave than Tim Waltz, and I'm surprised that Kamala Harris didn't pick me.
Yeah. Do you think? Can you get angry about this?
I can get angry about this.
Okay.
I can do whatever you need me to. I mean, it's like a casting session.
No, I mean, like
get going, Greg. There goes our freedoms. Yes, you can, because I happen to be, my domestic partner is a combat veteran, and combat sucks. And it's not like I wanted to be a groupie. I was backstage at a Nine Inch Nails show several times, but no one wanted to have sex with me. Okay? That was the difference between me and the groupies. Like, the groupies like, wow, they're really pretty and they have big boobies. Like, boy, I wish I were one of them. I don't think there are a lot of people who served who are like, wow, I really wish I was in combat, because it absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't wish that for anyone, but, you know, people like Richard Blumenthal and Tim Walz, shame on them, because the people whose lives were changed or ended because of their time in combat, you're denigrating your own service and theirs. And, yeah, go ahead.
So are you saying that robot legs are like the big boobies of veterans? Is that, I feel like I just learned something that I can use.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
No, it's like, I I would be accused of stolen valor by saying that I were a groupie. I was not.
If you're a groupie, does the band afterwards says thank you for your cervix?
I always did. It was always a point of order to me to say thank you for your cervix.
Lou, do you find this to be a big deal?
I think so. For one, I just want to thank Johnny for pointing out his legs because I felt weird bringing it up. Thank you, man.
But you were aroused backstage.
I mean, there was something about those legs. Yeah. Just imagine them wrapped around me, crushing me.
This is a strange show.
If you throw me one, we can do it right now.
Look, you know, I haven't served in the military, and it puts me as a civilian in a weird situation where I can't thank a veteran for their service unless I know exactly what they did.
Yeah.
You know, so it puts me in a tough spot because, like, you know, unless you're a World War II veteran, I can't thank you for serving in Italy.
Right.
Like, it's just not going to work out. And now I'm imagining, like, you know, Tim walking around with his machine gun just terrifying Italians. And also, you know, there's something that happens too. I think with like some veterans will use sort of their status as having served to push for legislation to take away rights from civilians.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the stuff that he's been pushing against, like, you know, the Second Amendment in particular. I mean, he's also a man who doesn't know what the First Amendment is.
Right.
He came out recently and said that, oh, the First Amendment doesn't protect hate speech or misinformation. It's like, if you can't even get the first one right, I can't trust you on the second one.
Also, I mean, to me, that stuff is worse. Yeah. And I know, and I'm saying that because I'm not a veteran, so I'm saying, like, to me, the speech stuff, the child transition crap that he's pushing, the snitch line, he's got a load of bad stuff, Tyrus. What do you say about this latest brouhaha?
I think what we're having a hard time here with old Timmy is failure to come across anything less than creepy.
Yes.
I mean,
creepy vibe.
When you meet somebody, you want to put your best foot forward, right? You want to tell them the best part of you. And so far, what we know is that he likes to play with butter with his hands. He sits alone in an ice box and claims to be a sportsman. And he was in the military, but he wasn't really committed to going to war. So he was good until a point. But he wants us to think he's the cool kid. So the easiest way for him to do that is because what do more Americans respect is a man who served. You even if you don't know him, thank you for your service, sir. You want to hear his story. You want to support. So he made himself, he wanted to be one of the cool kids.
Yeah.
You know, I had the same thing happen to me in college when I was younger. I was a starting All-American guard on my football team, and the guy who played behind me wasn't. And he didn't play much, hardly ever. So what he did was he'd go to clubs and say, oh, that's my number on TV. I'm number 78. I'm 6'8" and 335 pounds. And he was not. He was a center. He was a little bigger than you, Greg. And which is important for the story. When I found out about his stolen football valor, I handled it the football way. I stuffed him in my locker overnight. And the janitors found him. And we didn't have those problems anymore. I'm not saying to stuff him in a locker but he's just creepy. And he doesn't have, and if all he has, the best thing about him is a lie, who the hell vetted this guy? Because the coolest thing about him is something he didn't do.
Exactly.
Unless I'm missing way off on butter molding, but I don't think I am.
Yeah. It goes to show that there's stolen valor in every career. Happened to be in the adult film industry. But I moved on to Fox.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.